Bonelab was the most hyped VR game of all time, and when it came to the launch, it left many of us disappointed. The hype exceeded expectations, and with very minor and far apart updates, many had been wondering what was going on behind the scenes. Had the game been forgotten, or was Stress Level Zero working on something behind closed doors? Well, we finally got an answer in the 1-year anniversary of Bonelab, with a behind the scenes look and an insight into what Brandon and the team are working on. And that is what seems to be Bonelab 2.0. Now, I think most of us will agree that the best thing about Bonelab was more the idea of Bonelab and what the game could be. But this is still the case today. The potential will always be there, and soon we might just see this realised. The gameplay and freedom was arguably not as strong as Boneworks, as that really set the standard and was part of the reason for the hype. But this video and the anniversary update is about one thing in particular, and that's what Bonelab can be, and more specifically the software development kit for the modding community. The hopes were, like Counter-Strike and many other games developed from mods, that Bonelab, more specifically the Marrow engine, would pave the same path and create a foundation for other games to be made. Now, I'm going to leave timestamps in the description for those who want to skip ahead, but to truly understand what this update will bring and why it's such a big deal, we need to find out what has been missing and why part of the community has been so frustrated until now. Bonelab especially was a game made for modding, but launched without the majority of the modding tools. 6 months down the line, we have infrequent or non-existent updates, next to no communication, and the community was starting to get disheartened. Then Brandon posted this. He wanted feedback on 2 options. The first, to continue to fix, patch, and update the current community SDK to help the current modding community further develop what they have been working on, but in Brandon's own words, to continue working on this would hinder creativity and the future potential of the engine, and unfortunately, due to the speed of launch, not enough time was spent to streamline the SDK tools for launch. The second option was to start again, rebuild all the features from scratch, and document all the new tools to allow the user to have a relatively painless experience when using the new tools. Basically, what I see this translates to is the current software development kit for Bonelab is not user-friendly. Features were rushed to get this to launch, and this meant the team didn't get a chance to properly create the toolkit that's in a usable state. Even though this seemed like a choice for the community, the team went with option 2, to rebuild, stating, "We chose option 2. Some things needed to be touched up, others have been ripped out by its roots, and what stands in its place is much more accessible and usable than before." The biggest reason there's been no updates, and this was cleared up by a post, is that he didn't want to break any current mods that were available. And I can see why, because some of them are incredible. Like this, Call of Duty Zombies, Super Mario, Halo, and even the original Boneworks. The Marrow engine is probably one of the best interaction systems in VR, and could almost certainly be a standard for most VR games. If SLZ were to license out his engine for other creators to use, it would be a great start in creating consistency within VR games, because as you know, some games handle great and some don't. But that aside, and 6 months from the choices email and the anniversary of Bonelab, we get this, an actual update what the team has been working on. First, Brandon addresses what some of the community were worried about, that SLZ are 100% focused on the Marrow engine and Bonelab over other projects. Even though you might think Bonelab wasn't as successful as Boneworks, Bonelab has 3 times the average playtime, 1/3 the refunds, and 10 times the active daily users, which I guess launching on the most popular and first real mainstream VR device helped a lot with that. Then we get into the juicy stuff. First, he addresses that we will be getting an update later this year, and it will be in beta. And by the looks of it, this is that ground up SDK he mentioned earlier. The focus will be on core tech, optimization, polish, and the Marrow engine. He writes that VR needs a stable foundation for long-term growth. He adds the goal is to get the SDK the same externally as it is internally, so essentially to give you all the tools they have and basically create anything they can. Improvements with the character and NPCs are also being made, which is definitely something I look forward to, as I thought the NPCs in Bonelab were relatively poor. And lastly, you can see from this video, the team have been working on full body animation as input, which is another step in the right direction for realistic movement. He does note that this isn't using the latest full upper body tracking the Quest 3 is capable of, so that in itself is pretty impressive. And so from that post, it's clear that the team has been working on Bonelab all this time, and they have rebuilt the SDK from scratch, and we will be getting some sort of version of it later this year. I do believe that Bonelab still could be the greatest game ever, not because of the game itself, because what it can give to others. The Mara engine is incredible, and if all other games were to utilise this, it would make Stress Level 0 a fortune to start, and give us a better experience overall for our VR games. But maybe this has been the plan all along. The team would just rush to launch. If they manage to make a user-friendly SDK, polish up the game, optimise it for newer devices such as the Quest 3, then it looks like Bonelab will certainly get that revive we've all been waiting for. Either way, I'm excited for the future of Bonelab and what it could bring. But what do you all think about this? Is it too little too late, or is this just the beginning? If you like the video, like and subscribe. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one.